Hello everybody, welcome back to another video by DissociaDID. Today is a video about misconceptions or fake facts about DID. Let's go right into it. There's no use in fumbling around. DID has loads of stigma and just misinterpretations about it. People believe stuff about it that's just not true, or they'll make assumptions and then just like run with that like it's fact. First of all, one thing that we hear a lot, like said about other people more than said about us, but said about us too, not that it really matters, is people assuming that alters always have to be drastically different from each other and that no alters can be similar or even the same. That's a misconception. They absolutely can be similar or the same. One thing specifically that we hear people talking about is the voices of alters and being like, oh, well, their voices sound practically the same, or their voices sound really similar, their voice doesn't sound that much more masculine or whatever if it's a male alter fronting, or accents are a bit up and down or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, obviously. Think about it for a second. Just let's engage our brains for 1 second. This is a pet peeve of mine, right? Let's just turn on the brain. Why might people sharing the same body sound similar? Could it be they have the same voice box? Could it be that the majority of people with DID are just existing with their DID and aren't like training their voices to sound different? Because it's not a job, it's not a career they've gone into, they just are. There's only so much a voice box can do. Like there's only so much difference you can make when you have the same anatomy in the same physical body. It doesn't mean that they don't sound different inside the inner world. Alters might sound drastically different. They might still sound very similar. It doesn't make a difference to how the DID formed or why it's there or why it's needed. Alters don't have to be massively individual if that's not what was necessary to help the child survive. DID wasn't developed so that other people could look at it and be like, oh, that's interesting, or oh, that's different, or look how different they are from each other. No, the DID developed to stop this child from dying or feeling like they were dying. The DID in our brain don't give a what sounds exciting to other people, because that's not what DID exists for. It exists to keep a child safe and alive throughout their life, right? So let's say my voice sounds a little bit different from Soren's, for example. My voice is a bit lower, but then my voice isn't going to sound all that much different from Kem's voice, because both our voices are low. His voice is more gravelly than mine, but there's only so much difference that our actual voice box is going to be able to produce, right? And even if you were trying to make yourself sound like more like you sound inside, it's just going to start to strain, which I think is one of the reasons why Kem's voice is more gravelly anyway, because it just strains our throat, right? It's not comfortable. It's easy sometimes to go into the masking voice, which is just wherever your voice will naturally sit or whatever the voice of the host sounds more like. So we will have a, hi everybody, welcome back to DissociaDID voice. Because a lot of us, the majority of us, have learned to mask as the host throughout our life so that you won't know if we're fronting if we don't want you to. Our survival depended on that. When I was going to therapists and stuff like that and deliberately mucking up with our therapy so that our therapist would drop us or try to stop our system from going to therapy, it was really easy to pretend to be Chloe, because I felt like going to therapy at that point in time was dangerous or would put us in danger, that we couldn't talk about what happened to us, and was doing anything I could to make sure that that wouldn't happen. I can adjust my voice how I need to, right? But this is where my voice naturally sits. It's a lot deeper in the inner world. Well, not a lot deeper, but it's more masculine in the inner world. But I can't make our voice box do that, right? Another example is depending on what alters you're speaking to. For example, if we were to play Jay's voice next to Sally's voice, next to Kyle's voice, together, they're all going to sound pretty different from each other, right? It's Kyle. This is Jade.
I am Sally.
But then if you were going to play Sally's voice next to Mary's voice, their voices are quite similar in the body.
My name is Mary. I am Sally.
They're both caretakers, so they're both soft-spoken. They're both quite feminine people, so their voices naturally are higher, lilting, calming sort of tenor. That doesn't make these systems fake if they all sound similar or they look similar or whatever. It is because they share a body, and they don't need to be performative in order to be accepted. Some alters and systems are drastically different from each other, drastically different within the system, and good on them. Some alters and systems are more overt and others are more subtle with how their DID develops and is expressed within the body. That does not make one system more real than the other one. So that's a misconception, is that voices must sound completely different. No, you donkey, we share a voice box. It's not necessary. Can happen, sure. Ain't necessary. You want to be in the video? This is Serafina. Say hello to the people. Here's an example as well. Our cats will, yes, that's you, will also listen to different voices, but if we want to call our cat, for example, we all try and call her in the same voice because that was the easiest way to train her. Doesn't matter what voice we use for Mango, because Mango doesn't listen to anybody. Ever. Do you? You ain't seen our cats for a while. Look how f***ing massive. You can join our Patreon from $1 a month or £1 in your currency to get lots of exciting things and merch and never before seen videos. Thank you. Another misconception about DID is that DID is role-playing or otherwise just something that you choose to do. That ain't true. DID is a trauma-based dissociative disorder that develops after and during repeated childhood trauma. It's a defense mechanism that's currently believed to form because of structural dissociation. Soren, can you sit back? You're distracting me. I've read this 5 times and it's not going in my brain. It's a defense mechanism currently believed to form. Right. Maybe you should do this, Soren. I don't understand this. Hello, it's Soren. Right, so like Mike was saying, DID is a dissociative disorder that stems from repeated childhood trauma. In a lot of cases, but not all, this is through some kind of abuse. It's a defense mechanism that's believed to form because of structural dissociation on a very complex scale. For those of you who don't know what structural dissociation describes how the brain develops, for example, from normal levels of dissociation through to PTSD, through to complex PTSD or CPTSD, and then all the way through to tertiary levels of structural dissociation, which is where you find DID. They're all on the same scale, they just get more and more complex and more severe. So everybody who has DID also has complex PTSD. If you'd like to know more about structural dissociation, we do have some videos that explain it. A lot of the ones where we introduce DID will explain a little bit of structural dissociation, but we will also make a video if you would like to see it. Remember, if you are a member of our Patreon, you can suggest, hey Soren, hey Mike, everybody else, we want to see a video on this. So if you want a video on structural dissociation, please let us know. If you are a Patreon member, you can suggest and vote on what other people have suggested. So we may, if there is enough interest, make a video on that for you. But no, it's not something that you choose to have. It's not a role-playing situation. It's not anything like that. It is a very severe and complex form of PTSD in that if you want to dumb it down to the most dumb you can get it, it's a lot more complicated than that. But it stems from repeated trauma. Is not something people choose, it is a defense mechanism. You can see this through brain scans of people who have DID and people who don't have DID. There is visible differences in the brain. Another stigma and misinterpretation of what DID actually is that all people with DID are very dangerous. Why do we think this? Because all media has thrown at us for the last handful of years, generally, in terms of movies, are things like Split. There is some decent stuff out there that does portray DID in a much more positive or realistic light, but the majority of blockbuster films and things like that portray DID as something that is a horror movie or scary, and the people with it are monsters or dangerous. And why might that be? Because if people were actually understanding DID, they would have to understand the massive level and the severity of how often childhood trauma actually happens and how much it can actually impact the brain, and how many of these people have actually survived those experiences and could speak out about what they've experienced if they remember it at a later date. So the easiest way to shut people up is to discredit them. And also a lot of people don't want to put in the work into understanding what it is. If there's something that seems fantastical or sensational or just so bizarre and beyond what you usually experience, why not make a big blockbuster movie out of it rather than trying to actually understand it and understand the people with it? But who is damaged by that? The people with it, who are already the survivors of childhood trauma. It's a vicious cycle, and it leads to people not being believed, not being able to get the help they need, not being able to access proper care and treatment, and also people being unable to speak up about the abuse or trauma that they experienced as children, because they are discredited, they're seen as crazy, they're seen as dangerous. And this needs to change. This is why we run DissociaDID. When we were first diagnosed, we didn't know what to do, because even when we were calling helplines and stuff like that, they had no clue what was going on. People didn't know what DID was. Anyone we reached out to was completely clueless about it and how to help us. And we had a friend, we've told this story before, but we had a friend, this was after we'd made Dissociated and they'd watched a couple of videos and they'd never seen a switch before, and I let them know when we were in person together that I was feeling a bit switchy. We were just walking somewhere. She said something like, well, they're not going to kill me, are they? Or they're not going to hurt me, are they? Or something like that. But she meant it. Like, she genuinely meant it. And I was like, no, of course not. No. We're all here because we survived things like that happening. We just want to get through our day without having abuse held at us from being online. And this is what a lot of people also consider as a misconception, that if you have DID you are unable to work, or you'd be so ashamed of it that you'd never show your face publicly and you'd never talk about it, or you'd just be so sick that you'd be constantly locked up in an inpatient facility and never speak about it to anyone and never be able to do anything successful or be able to reclaim your life and your body and speak about it. That's not true. You can. We are living examples. There are lots of people who create content about DID, and there are lots of people who are very, very successful who may or may not speak about their DID. And if you do have DID and you're successful, that doesn't mean that you have to speak about having DID and being successful. It doesn't mean that you ever have to bring it up ever. That is your choice. That is your prerogative. That's the amazing thing about being able to survive from childhood. Even if you do end up with a disorder like this, you get to make that choice now once you're free from it all. You never have to speak about it if you don't want to. But if you do want to, and you want to educate or raise awareness, or just not hide it, or not need to mask it and just exist as you are, in the same way that other people online, they don't have to pretend to be someone they're not unless they want to, or they feel like they need to. Otherwise, they can just exist online and do whatever they want and interact with other people in that way. Why are people with DID not allowed to do that? People with DID can be lawyers, doctors, very, very successful people, very, very intelligent. A lot of people with DID, as it's kind of necessary in order to be able to form DID somewhat, they're quite creative. You can live a successful life with DID. If you have DID, you can lead a successful life with DID. You can. It doesn't matter where you're at now. There are ways to manage things. There are ways and answers and support. There are things out there that can help you. I know a lot of the time it feels impossible to find it, but this is both Mike and Soren telling you you can do it. It's a misconception that all people with DID are buried underneath what they experienced. Some of us are. Some of us ain't. But those are 3 misconceptions of DID. I hope that this has been helpful or interesting or intriguing. Maybe makes you want to learn a little bit more. Maybe makes you want to check out some of the other videos that we have on our channel that you can see here. But if you enjoy this, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell. YouTube isn't going to tell you when we upload unless you click that little notification bell, and if you don't, then you might never see us again, so please make sure to do that. If you enjoy this and you'd like to see more of it behind the scenes, bloopers, unseen videos, little clips of what's coming next before anyone else gets to see them, merch, would you like to be able to vote on videos, would you like to be able to suggest videos, all things like that, and have access to hand-drawn art, things like that over there. You can subscribe to our Patreon, and our Patreon can be joined from £1 or $1 a month, whatever the equivalent is in your currency, and you get access to whatever you want depending on what tier you would like to join. Also, if you don't know what happened to us with the man called Sergio Costa and what he did, well, we have a playlist called What Happened to DissociaDID, which you can find here, and that explains what he did and why we are currently in court against him. We are only able to do this and we are only able to fight for justice because we have a crowd justice fundraiser. This is how we are able to pay our lawyers so that we can get the justice that we deserve. If you would like to help us raise this money, you can donate to Crowd Justice. The money goes straight from Crowd Justice to our lawyers. We never touch it. We can't have a penny of it. It just completely bypasses us, and our lawyers can only use it for cases against Sergio Costa. You can find that at www.crowdjustice.com/case/DissociaDID. And if you can't donate or you don't want to donate, that is absolutely fine. But if you are still interested in helping us, please consider sharing the playlist, sharing the original video, and sharing Crowd Justice fundraiser link, and that will go a long way to helping us be able to finally leave this part of our life in the past and move forward. We hope this video was helpful and that you enjoyed it. We can't wait to see you in the next one. Lots of love, everybody. Bye.